Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? First things first, I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Now let's get into the news. It was just recently reported that Terrence Crawford is about to make his return on February 27th. He is going to be fighting in New York at the Madison Square Garden. Now that's the good news. The bad news is he was supposed to be fighting against Mauricio Herrera, which would have been a great matchup. But more surprising news, Mauricio Herrera actually turned down the fight. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it's that surprising, more disappointing than anything, because I can understand why he would turn down the fight. It is Terrence Crawford we're talking about. But it's just sad, man. I mean, right now, boxing is in a stage where it's getting bigger and bigger when it comes to the PBC series and Al Haymon. But you have so many fights that can be made, and these fighters are not willing to step up and take the challenge. I would not have expected this from Mauricio Herrera. But you have to attribute this to, once again, how good Terrence Crawford is. I mean, if you think about it, guys, there's been a serious trend in the sport of boxing, and it's not a good one, okay? You had Errol Spence, who was going to take a big step up and fight the big, tough Roberto Garcia. He pulls out of the fight, right? You had Canelo Alvarez, who had somewhat of an obligation to face Golovkin after the Cotto fight. He turned that fight down. Now he wants to continue to fight at 155 when he has a belt at the middleweight division. You had Gennady Golovkin, who turned down an Andre Ward fight that would have been 10 times bigger than a David Lemieux pay-per-view fight. Then when I seen the emergence of Danny Jacobs and Billy Joe Saunders looking like some young, very talented middleweight champions, I felt, okay, this is good. Now we're going to at least get to see the 34-year-old Golovkin step up in competition. Even if Golovkin is favored to beat these guys, we're still going to see a step up for Gennady Golovkin, and vice versa for Danny Jacobs or Billy Joe Saunders. Then all of a sudden, we hear that Danny Jacobs and Billy Joe Saunders, they're not willing to get in the ring with Golovkin unless they get $1 zillion. But back to the good side. We do have pretty much a guaranteed signed contract that Andre Ward will be fighting Kovalev in 2016, as long as they continue to win. We have some other fights. Deontay Wilder is already negotiating to fight Alexander Povetkin, and they say negotiations are going well. You know, you have Sean Porter versus Keith Thurman. That fight is looking like it's going to be in either the end of February or the beginning of March out here in Madison Square Garden. So, and I'm just naming a few. There's a lot of big fights next year. So going back to this situation with Terrence Crawford versus Mauricio Herrera, like I said at the beginning of this video, this doesn't make sense to me. I believe that the sport is just making it way too easy to turn down the toughest opponents. There needs to be a better structure for the sport of boxing. We need to have some type of tournament every year in every division. They need to find a way to give these fighters a better incentive so they would be willing to do something like that. The WBC president, Mauricio Herrera, kudos to him because he's already trying to put something like that together. Mauricio personally told me that he wants to incorporate boxing tournaments in the sport. Not just once every 6 years, but something maybe every year. Okay? You know, when it comes to Al Haymon, I'm going to tell you one of the reasons. There's many reasons why he's successful. One of the main reasons why Al Haymon is successful is because he's a type of promoter that doesn't punish you for losing. Right? And I'm not saying that promoters, they purposely punish their fighters for losing, but you have all of these fighters, they are so afraid to lose. That's why they don't get in the ring with a Terrence Crawford or something like that. They're thinking, man, if I lose, you know, it's back to the drawing board and whatever. But then again, sometimes it's deeper than just losing. I truly believe some of these fighters, they feel like, oh no, man, that dude may knock me out and embarrass me. I don't mind taking an L, but I don't want to be laying face first on the ground having my family look at that shit. I think that's how some of these fighters are looking at, especially when it comes to fighters like Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, right? But the thing that Al Haymon does with his fighters, like Broner, for example, Broner versus Sean Porter is a perfect example. That fight, if it wasn't for Al Haymon, we probably would have never got to see Porter versus Broner. Because you had Broner, who was going back down to 140. He pretty much didn't want to come back up to 147, right? And Sean Porter wasn't trying to go all the way down to 140. So they finally came up with a catch weight. Matter of fact, to further prove how difficult this fight was to make, after the fight was signed, Adrian Broner's own trainer, he said, I was surprised that they took the fight, right? After Adrian Broner basically got what he wanted, which was he wanted the fight at a catch weight, right? Sean Porter was the one that was perceived to be at a disadvantage because he's a natural welterweight and he had to come down a couple pounds. So just hearing Adrian Broner's trainer say, man, I'm really surprised, that he took the fight and he was willing to come down in the weight and et cetera, that just goes to show you that Al Haymon and, of course, Team Porter, they were willing to do whatever it takes to make this fight come to fruition. Not only that, but this is what I truly believe. I believe that Al Haymon gives these fighters the perfect incentive. He tells these fighters, look, man, don't worry. If you lose, don't worry because we're going to bring you back. Okay? So, of course you want to go in there and win, but if you lose, don't worry about it. Because basically the way Al Haymon has things set up, it's like the NFL. You lose one week, you back playing the next week, right? So, you done already forgot about that loss. You mess around and have a real good win the very next week. And that's what we seen with Adrian Broner, right? Adrian Broner, he lost to Sean Porter, right? 3 months later, and that's another thing. Al Haymon keeps him very active, almost like NBA players, NFL players. They're constantly active, right? They don't have time to sit on the shelf and get rusty. So Adrian Broner, he lost to Sean Porter. What did he do? Al Haymon brought him right back. Then he ended up fighting for a title against Oliver Diev and getting another $1 million paycheck, right? That is something that would make a fighter be willing to take that tough challenge against this naturally bigger guy, Sean Porter, because I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try to win. But if I lose, I'll be back next week with $1 million payday. So that gets these guys in the ring. That gives these fighters way more courage to get in the ring, because they actually have more to gain than they have to lose, right? When you have someone like Mauricio Herrera, knowing how good Terrence Crawford is, and let's just face it, as far as I'm concerned, and Mauricio Herrera, he's one of the best fighters at this division. But I truly believe, because the report was Mauricio Herrera, usually the excuse is always the money. That's always the first excuse. But they said Mauricio Herrera, he had no excuse. He just turned down the fight. And, the reports are he's going to most likely just fight a lesser opponent, someone that he has more of a chance of winning, or beating, I should say, right? Like a Provodnikov, and he does have history with Provodnikov, but let's face it, that is a much easier fight. A guy you already beat. And Provodnikov is damn near on the decline now. All right, he just came off of a loss to Lucas Matisse. But yeah, man, I mean, the whole thing is, if you have confidence in yourself and you really believe that you're the best in your division, there's no way you're going to pass up on the king of the division. I mean, if the Olympics just gave you an option, you could either fight for the gold medal or you could fight for the bronze medal. Which medal are you going to most likely fight for? You're going to fight for the gold medal, right? So it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense because, like I said, Mauricio Herrera, he may be a good fighter, but he ain't no damn fool, if you know what I mean. That boy know how talented Terrence Crawford is. And, I really fear, I really, really do fear we have another Black Murderers Row list that is emerging, and the list may be bigger than the one was back in the 1940s. Now, this is a true story, by the way, and if you didn't catch the story that I did on the Black Murderers Row, I'll put the link in the description box. It's a must-see. Very informative, very educational. But I don't want to see another Black Murderers Row. I don't want to see it, right? Because if we see another one of those, then that means there are going to be a lot of fighters that are going to be left out in the cold, not getting the best matches because all of the big names or the so-so names are too afraid to get in the ring with them. And we never get to see any of these great fights, right? I mean, when you look at the 154-pound division, you got Demetrius Andrade, who's the best there. You got the Charlo brothers. You got Eric Walker. You got Chris Pearson. You got Julian Williams. These are monsters in this division. And yet, none of the big names like Canelo will get in the ring with them. All right? In this sport, you have to beat a champion to become a champion. You have to beat a star to become a star. This is the reason why Canelo chased Mayweather for so long. This is the reason why Mayweather chased De La Hoya for so long. This is the reason why Guillermo Rigo chased Donaire for so long. You have to beat a pound-for-pound champion or a star to become a star, right? And right now, there is way too much avoiding going on. And it's not helping the sport. Thank God we have so many different avenues now. We are going to get to see a lot of good fights. But this Mauricio Herrera news, I don't like it. I don't like it. And, Mauricio Herrera, cool cat. He's been on my radio show multiple times. Matter of fact, we're going to have you back on the show, Mauricio. Maybe we'll get you on the show and you could go ahead and talk about this situation, and explain why you're making this decision. But, it is what it is for now. It is what it is for now. So now Terrence Crawford is left scrambling for an opponent. You got Andre Ward. He's trying to fight the undefeated Cuban sensation, Sullivan Barrera. And Barrera, and Team Barrera, they're scratching their head saying, do we really want to get in the ring with pound for pound the best fighter in the world? I don't know. And guys, I want you guys to understand something. When I call Andre Ward pound for pound the best fighter in the world, I want you guys to understand. The greatest thing about being a reporter is I get to talk to the most relevant people in the sport. I ain't talking about, trolls on the internet. I'm talking about the cats that actually do this for a living. The professional boxers and trainers. I talk to them all the time. 95% of them all agree with me when they call Andre Ward pound for pound the best fighter in the world. So that stuff that you hear in the comment section, that's null and void. That means nothing, right? You could say all the most ridiculous troll shit you want, but come up to a boxing gym with me and see how them conversations play out. You ain't gonna hear none of that internet decaf shit from the real fighters. No, sir. You ain't gonna hear it. So once again, going back to Herrera, I'm rambling. It'll be interesting to see what Herrera does next. There's been, once again, like I said, there was talks that Herrera was saying that he wouldn't be ready by February 27th, which that doesn't make any sense to me because that's the end of February, which is damn near March. Training camp is usually 6 to 8 weeks. Some of these cats train for 4 weeks, so